quorum. We can get started. Oh, wait. One, two,
Oh, yeah,
three.
we do.
I was like, we have a quorum?
Angie said she's coming, but she'll be a little late.
Did she tell you how a little late? Like 5:10 or?
You saw Pat was closer to 6.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah.
All right, yeah. Well, we'll get her rolling. Grace, are you ready to rock and roll? Everybody ready?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. At this time, I would like to call to order the September 22nd, 2023 budget meeting. Would you please rise with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Kluskevich.
Here.
Ms. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Willenbecker.
Here?
Mr. Redinger.
Here.
Mr. Lister, Ms. Lloyd, and Mr. Spicer not here.
We did not have an executive session on our last budget meeting, and I reported on our last executive session on our last meeting. At this time, do I have public comment on agenda items? Seeing no public comment. Agenda item number 1, proposed budget for codes.
So basically, what you can see from the 2023 forecast, nothing has changed so much. We're looking pretty good with that, and we're not seeing anything unexpected occurring, so that's a good thing, hopefully. Any questions with the 2023 sections?
No.
Okay. 2024, we had the typical increases, as you can read through there. We're not planning to have any additional hires at the moment, but should they occur, there's the potential of the permanent zoning officer getting a shift with the other employees that are within the department. So that would be the only adjustments we see in the payroll and benefit side, other than the standard increases. And then for the typical codes and zoning expenses, I tried to look at the past 3 years of the budget, where it was standing, and see the trends, and meet that as fairly as possible for the overall budget. So you'll see a lot of decreases in my budget here. And then hopefully we don't have too many increases, but we're still ahead enough to have that buffer should that occur. However, we may see slight increases as the year occurs, but I didn't want to get too bloated with the budget if we're not really using it in the past 3 years. So that's where I stood on that. And then we also have the public works supervisor being shifted from my department into his own department.
Excellent.
Any questions on any of this?
No? Go ahead.
Jason, did I hear that there might be a change in the Commonwealth codes folks that serve us?
I was looking at the different code services that are out there, not really seeing a difference as far as service or price. So I figured we'll just stick with what we know, not disrupt too much of the department at this point in time.
But is there a retirement in that?
Dave Edgar is in the process of retiring, and they have another person coming to take his place, but he'll still be on an as-needed training basis.
Right. Is there a gap between one and the other?
The other has not had extensive zoning experiences yet, where he has had basically 30-some years of zoning. So there's definitely going to be a gap.
Is there anything we can do to up the chances of hiring a permanent zoning officer?
I'm only a year in, but my understanding is the position has been open for some time and there hasn't been much of a interest, which is why we're continuing with the
Right.
third party. I know that I've been doing some trainings and stuff, getting ready for the position, should it still be available, but
Oh.
I'm not quite at that level just yet.
Oh, okay. That's good to know.
We could talk about when that transition happens, that change, maybe there's some safeguards we can put in place
Mhm.
for you, like checks and balances that maybe, we can run past Matt as well. Matt has some, I don't wanna say zoning experience, but with his stormwater experience and his experience as the compliance officer here prior to being public, the highway supervisor,
Right.
he's a pretty good researcher and understands the zoning ordinance pretty well, so, if we find ourselves in that position, maybe we ought to have, some oversight of the new person when they come in,
Right.
through you and
Right.
maybe Matt, we could
Right.
talk to him too.
Oh.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I know I'm just a year in, but I've started to get a feel for what the expectations and what the zoning, ordinances are, versus someone just coming in, starting new and fresh off the
Yeah.
cuffs there, so, but yeah, we do pretty good as a team, talking with each other, bouncing ideas off each other, and doing what's best for the town, so.
Question for you. Commonwealth Code, Dave, can you hear me? Commonwealth Code, Dave is his name, correct?
Mhm.
How many days does he put in with the borough?
He does 3 days a week.
Is he doing 5 days a week with Commonwealth, just 3 days here and 2 days with somebody else?
That I'm not 100% sure on, so. I know our budget is just at certain hours, so he's basically 3 days.
What was going through my mind, and I don't know what our contract agreement is with CCIS, but if he retires from CCIS, let's hypothetically say he's doing 5 days a week with CCIS, he retires, would he be willing to come do like 2 days a week here, directly for us?
Well,
Like I said, I don't know what the contract is, or
when he retires from CCS, he loses that support. While he's working for CCS, and CCS is basically working for us, not Dave.
correct.
When Dave has an issue, he has other people at CCS
Mhm.
that he can filter things through. For example, commercial.
Well, what I was getting at is still, I'm sorry, I should have finished more. So CCIS would still bring in their replacement for Dave.
Yeah.
But would Dave be, if we didn't have any conflicts of interest, would he be willing to put in 2 days a week solely for the borough? So we'd still have CCIS here in their capacity doing 3 days a week, but maybe have Dave, say Dave is willing to give 2 days a week, maybe you could spend 1 day a week training our yeah, I'm just spitballing ideas.
Well, we've done that, and I don't want to get into details here in a public meeting with personnel, but, we've kind of talked through different things, what we need to do, and what's a good thing to do and what isn't a good thing to do. So I think our best plan right now is to just stick with CCS and a new person and keep an eye on what they're doing when zoning requests come in, so that we know that something does get rubber stamped. It should be rubber stamped.
Right.
The bottom line is you guys have a plan.
Yes. Yeah.
That's all. That's good enough for me. You got a plan. We're well with it.
Okay. Any other questions?
No, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks.
Agenda item number 2, budget police director rights. Thought you ran out on us.
Good evening. Sorry for that inconvenience. I had to answer that phone call. You should have a narrative in front of you for the police budget for 2023 and 2024. For 2023, the first bullet, police payroll is tracking under the 2023 plan due to staffing issues. That's obvious. We've been down several positions all year. We've hired 2 officers this year, Officer Coleman and Officer Witherite, but Sergeant Morris retired, Sergeant Wenner resigned, Officer Schmidt and Officer Gross also resigned. So the good news is the one person we had in the works passed the psychological exam yesterday, so we'll be setting a hire date for him. So he should be starting in the next couple weeks. The second item, several line items are significantly under budget and directly related to the staffing issues. Again, clothing, training, those types of things clearly correlate to having people to do those things and the resources to send them. So they're significantly under budget. Vehicle maintenance, if you recall, vehicle maintenance was reduced last year from 52,000 to 30,000 for this year, and we're still going to be under budget for that. So that was a smart move on reducing that. The only line item that appears to be tracking over budget this year is legal services. I don't really have a lot of input on how that's addressed. So, capital outlays for 2023, money was requested for implementation of the body-worn camera program, which was approved through ICDA funds in 2021. I'm planning on completing and implementing that program by the end of the year 2023. So that'll be spent. For 2024, for police payroll and benefits, there's a 3% salary increase per the collective bargaining agreement with the union. The plan includes replacing all vacancies. Total payroll expenses, although there's a 3% increase, they're only $5,000 more than 2023 due to the retirement and resignation of 2 sergeants and then being replaced by younger, lower-paying officers. For the police expenses for 2024, there's only 2 discretionary spending line items that have increased. Operating supplies increased 3% due to a software license. Two separate software licenses went up, so there was a 3% increase in that line. And then dues, subscriptions, and memberships increased $3,500 due to the planned implementation of the body-worn camera, which will require additional cloud storage. It's the same cloud storage used by the in-car camera system, so it's an easy implementation as far as cloud storage goes for the system. And then IT contracted services increased partially due to an end-of-life replacement program for the in-car camera systems. They were all bought at the same time too, several years ago. And we're going to start replacing them on a 1 or 2 a year basis so we can get a rotation going, similar to what you do with, IT and computer systems. There's no capital outlay requests for 2024. Does anybody have any questions about anything? Thank you very much.
Actually, I do have one. I know you don't have it in this year's budget, and I know we've talked about it in the past, but maybe our goal for 2024's budget is to implement maybe the department's first EV car.
Yeah, we've talked about that, and I think my recommendation, we wait till there's a police package offered. There's EV police cars out there, but they're building them. They're buying an EV and then taking it to an outfitter who's putting it together. When we buy our cars now, they're police packages from the dealer.
So, I mean, I do understand what you're saying, and I think it'd be cool if Middletown kind of
I think it's a great idea.
led by example,
It's a
and
great idea.
instead of waiting for maybe Derry Township to purchase 20 of them, maybe we lead the way, so to speak.
I think it's a great idea.
I mean, I just know because our town's so small, I think,
It would be,
I mean, and maintenance-wise, you have virtually no maintenance.
That's right.
No brakes, you have oil changes, you have no maintenance.
right.
So I think implementing
a
one,
great
maybe
idea.
2, just my thoughts.
Yeah,
Do you know how far out they are if you order them?
no, I don't. I know there's police packages coming out in the year 2024. I know they're going to be available next year. But I think it's a great idea. I'll keep my eyes peeled and keep you posted.
And maybe, I know it's not in the budget, but maybe there might be some sort of grant program that maybe we could even make some purchases in 2024 with, maybe federal or state help.
I'll definitely look.
Just FYI.
I think it's a great idea. We've talked about it down the street, and there's definitely some interest. There's some people that don't necessarily disagree, but I think it's a great idea. They're fast and they're quiet.
They're super fast.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 3, administration, you're up. No, you're good.
In 2023, the payroll and benefits for both administration and finance are running slightly under plan due to the plan finance assistant, which we are going to do in 2024. So that's why it's running slightly under. On expenses, we're running slightly higher in the finance area due to these bank fees, which I'll talk about in my the October workshop. But that's mainly why we're running slightly over on that. Net, I think we're going to be fine, but overall budget. The revenue in 2023, the general fund revenue, which is tax-based, is running slightly over plan, but we're going to hit the run where the bulk of it has been issued and paid and processed. So towards the end of the year, it'll trickle in instead of, so I think that's why it's running slightly over plan. And the electric fund revenue is running on plan. We're about 73% through the year, and they're right on plan. Does anybody have questions on 2023?
No.
Okay. 2024, in the administrative and finance area, it was a 3% raise across the board, 6% increase for health benefits and insurance, and I have the financial assistant hire plan for 7/1. This is in hopes that that person will be on board for at least 6 months full-time and learn all the different positions down there. And then when Linda decides she would like to go part-time, that person would then be slotted for her position. The expense side, I did the same thing. Health insurances were, I shouldn't have had the first two here. Insurances, again, 6%. Administration expenses are over 2023, mainly due to IT expense and postage expense. The finance expenses are over 2023, again, due to the credit card fees and IT postage and tax bureau expense. Now, the tax bureau expense is offset by income, so it's really a net, but that's another reason why that category is higher. The revenue side, the general fund revenue is planned at approximately 2% higher than 2023, and that's based on the increased tax rate millage. And also the tax database that we have is allowing a lot more efficiency. We're collecting the census forms, so we're getting new people all the time that we're able to bill occupation and per capita to. We're also, Lori is a bulldog on this stuff, and she goes through records and figures out who should be in the tax database, and so that is becoming a real benefit to tax collection.
Good. Thank you for doing that, Sally. You
You're welcome.
knew that would be a big benefit to us.
The electric fund revenue is at the same level, approximately the same level, slightly increased for 2024. And I have no capital requests at this time. Does anybody have any questions on the overall plans, general or electric?
Can you
Any
tell us,
questions?
maybe can you summarize where we are as far as
Sure.
revenue, expected revenue and expenses, and what we're gonna end up with as far as balance or need for?
So I think there's a couple of things. Well, our revenue in the general fund is, as I said, slightly higher. There are some additional, the first page. On the expense side, Matt went through some additional infrastructure expenses that he would like to do next year to the library, the borough buildings, and parks. that were outlined and in the zero balance. All those items are in the zero balance budget. Those were really besides Matt's additions, there were 2 requests one from the historical restoration for an increase of $79,500. There were 3, and I believe I attached that to your initial email. There were 3 items that he had requested. One was digitizing files, another was plaques, and a third one was, I can't remember what the big one was.
It was a,
Historical survey.
Yeah.
Designation survey. And then the other that's in this plan, is the request from the fire department for the roof at 28.8. So those are the 2 items that actually have put us over.
What page is that?
Page 4.
Thank you.
So the 107.5 that you see negative, which means we have more expense than revenue, is the 28.8 of the fire department and the 79.5 from restoration. Other than those 2, we're at a zero balance budget as presented.
So where's that bottom line? What page?
Page 4.
Are we going to be hearing a presentation from the Historical Society?
Because the fire department and historical restoration are
It's on page 4.
planning
Page 4.
changes or requests to their budget,
That's the one I'm looking for.
they are scheduled for October 4th. So they are scheduled to present if you want them to present.
Well, what we did and why I had Sally show them in the red, because each one of those, from the roof from the fire department, and if you're going to do a one-time study for historical zoning overlay, they're one-time expenses, and I think if we're going to fund them, I don't think they belong in this 2024 operation budget. I think they should be something that council should consider pursuing out of a fund balance that we may have in reserves, or a grant, or cash reserves, and not in your operating budget, because you're not going to have those expenses in 2025. These are one-time things. Now, the reason you're seeing some capital outlay in highway and property, because we plan to have, although we have a capital expense, let's say, for replacing doors at Hopper Park Pavilion of X amount of dollars, we plan to, in 2025, still have that line item and a cash amount
Just with the new project.
with a new project, yes.
So instead of doors, it'd be
Yes,
benches.
exactly.
Instead of, gotcha.
So that's why these one-time projects from a commission and a fire department, which has their own separate budget, and they're not really part of our operations budget. We pulled them out, and by pulling those out and funding them somewhere else, you have a balanced budget for 2024 on the general fund and the electric. No tax increases needed.
So should we wait till the October 4th to have a deeper discussion on that?
You
No?
Well, you can pull them out and look at the budget as it is without them in it, and on October 4th, have the discussion at that point, not related to the 2024 budget.
I can only speak for myself. I'd like to see the $70,000 for Historical Society off the table, and the roof of the fire department come out of a sinking fund.
Well, no, it would come out of either, like Ken said, a positive fund balance at the end of 2023, or we could take it out of pooled cash, which is our cash on reserve.
And we, you can continue to have those one time, because they really are, each one's a capital outlay expense. They're not really an operating expense. So, if you want to move forward with the operating budget and continue to have discussions about those, because there's 2 questions you have to discuss. Number one, do you want to do those projects? And if you do, the second question, how are you gonna fund them?
Mhm.
And I'm trying to answer the second question for you. We should fund them from cash reserves
Mhm.
or, you know, or grants and not out of the operating.
The roof, we can't use the sinking fund for the roof?
Well, I looked in the ordinance is written as that was really set up for apparatus and equipment.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
if you're gonna stick to the law, the ordinance, and we should,
We should, yep.
it would be better just to take that money out of the cash reserve.
I'll just, okay.
So the idea is the fund balance at the end of the year, instead of putting into the sinking fund, it would go to the roof. Because we
It would
can't-
be a separate amount from their 10% that they get now. Or we could say it's part of the 10%, but I think that's a bigger discussion.
Keep it simple.
That's an
Yeah.
important
Reserve.
point, though. For me, that's an important point.
I think if I'm picking up what you're putting down, if it's cash reserves, it's still,
You could do it now.
Yeah, you
You
can
could
do
do
it
it
now.
next year.
do it right now.
Yeah.
So,
You could apply for a gaming grant. I don't know how quickly they're gonna move on. I wouldn't say gaming grant because that's 2025
No,
to
no,
get the
forget-
money. But
I'm saying if we funded it in this year's budget, right now, gave them the $28,000 now, that would be less of the surplus.
no, it's not identified in this year's budget. You can't fund it out of this year's operating budget because you don't know if you're gonna have excess money at the end of the year. You do have cash reserves. And, 28,000 compared to the amount of cash reserve we have, 28,000 is a very small amount. It wouldn't frighten me to take 28,000 out of cash reserves to pay for that. You have a healthy fund balance in reserve.
I think where I'm at is, I would prefer not to do 28,000 over and above, their general, then the end of the year into the sinking fund, and then another 28. Which is why when the idea of the sinking fund was first brought up, I thought that makes sense to me. We put money in, there's no emergency, nobody needs it right now for equipment, but if they need the roof, then use it for the roof. You're saying that is not the way we can do it, because the sinking
not gonna-
fund is really for apparatus.
Yes.
Right.
And so, if there is an end-of-year fund balance, that some would go into the sinking fund for the fire department. I guess I'm trying to figure out, before it goes into the sinking fund and it can't be used for the roof, could it be used for the roof
That's
and
what I'm
not go
saying.
into the sinking fund?
That's what I'm saying, use the money this year. Do we know if we're
But we
gonna
don't
have,
know
right.
if we have it till the end of the year.
Right. The end of the year, you're gonna have, possibly, you may have money left over. If you have money left over, of that money left over, a percentage goes to the fire sinking fund, percentage goes to public works vehicle sinking fund, and percentage goes to the rainy day fund from when Mr. Reed was on council. They have three funds. If anything's left over after you fund those, according to the ordinance, 10% or whatever the amount, then rest of that goes to pooled cash. Like it always has every other year. So you could look at the end of the year and say, we have another 50,000 left over. After
After
we
the
funded all
10%.
those other
yeah, but
files that you could pull.
I think what Ellen and I
Full cash.
think
Yeah.
we were on the same pages
Mhm.
before, if we were gonna end the year with $100,000 surplus before hitting those three funds, taking that $28,000 out of that.
Not before hitting those three funds. You gotta hit those three funds first because they're law. You have ordinances for those. So you can't pull from that and shortchange the laws you set up. They come first.
I thought those funds were, correct me if I'm wrong, I thought those funds were whatever our surplus was, we took 10% of
Right.
it, moved. So what I'm getting at is, if the roof crashes in tomorrow and we have to fix it, we have to fix it.
Cash reserves.
Cash
Don't worry
reserves.
about leftovers.
Because that's where what Ken is saying is, after we do all the 10%, which is after audit, by the way, which isn't until June of next year, that money drops into pooled cash anyway. So why not just use pooled cash?
She uses the term pooled cash, I use the term.
Cash on reserve.
Same thing.
Oh,
Same
okay.
thing. So why not just use it from there? That's the discussion I think that
Did-
needs to happen in council.
The 28,000, is that a number that the fire department got from a contractor?
Yes, that's the quote they got.
Yeah, they have a quote.
28,800.
And that price is good for 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days?
I don't know, 'cause I think that estimate was from February.
Yeah, it's old. Yeah, it might be more.
So they're going to fund the difference?
We haven't had that discussion with them. That question is about, and that quote's been out there for months and months, right, Jenny? Yeah, February. So,
So I think that
if they don't do the
is-
work until next year, it could be 32,000 for all we know. We haven't talked to them about the difference. But they did, as far as the budget, they requested 28.8. So that's all we should worry about, what they requested.
Okay, I'm on board with that. So it sounds like our really only option is just, doesn't really matter if we do it this year or next year, just put it in next year's budget, pull it out of full cash, one-time fee.
Mhm.
Be done with it.
Yeah.
If the body so chooses to fund it.
Yeah, and that could be a separate motion from this budget. You could just
Yeah, it's not gonna go in the
talk about
budget.
that at the workshop and then vote on it to do that as a separate expense, not connected to this vote. No problem.
So if we take out, the historical restoration and the fire department request and treat them separate, is what we're saying is the budget is balanced.
So, for our next budget meeting, could we have, hear me out, this is just me, could we have a motion for the balanced budget, and then, two motions, one for the fire department and one for the, and we can just hear them and vote?
Yes, you could. You do.
So,
I mean, you
what I'm looking for an agenda item is, for our next budget meeting, is 3 motions. This budget without the fire and without the historical society, our balanced budget. And then both presentations we'll hear, and we'll have them on for budget, or for, voting. We'll then can vote on the historic and then can vote on the roof.
You sure can. As far as a big chunk of the historic restorations request, as far as the zoning overlay, you heard that presentation earlier in the
Yep.
year, I think. So you kind of know what that's about. You'll hear it again from the commission, but that's a study to put a historic overlay on certain parts of town. So, remember, they brought the fellow from Harrisburg.
And I remember, because I was not,
Yeah.
I
So
wasn't in
that's
favor
I
of
think
it.
50,000 of their $79,000 request roughly. So,
And then the other 2 projects were plaques and,
digitizing,
Those
Sorry.
plaques, there's a box of them at the museum. They're those pewter plaques if your house is historic. That's what it is.
Oh,
And I don't think they've issued one in the last year.
But the digitizing, I'm interested in hearing a little bit more about that. I mean, is that like digitizing
You can get a
archives?
grant to digitize.
Okay. I don't know.
that's why you
nothing
could have these, other than the roof project, you know, if they have a leaky roof, that's more, or closer even, that's more urgent than, I think, with the other things you could have separate discussions, and you don't have to hold up your budget.
No, I think next meeting, we're gonna hear from we're gonna have 2 presentations. We'll hear from them. We'll have a motion to accept this budget, a balanced budget, with those 2 items excluded. And then we'll hear from the fire department, we can vote, and we'll hear from the historical society, and we can vote, and then our budget season's pretty much done. If is everybody?
Eugene, a little overview of what we're going over real quick is, when you walked in, we were talking about a request from the fire department to put roof replacement at their firehouse in the budget. And since it's a one-time capital expense, I suggested to pull it out of this budget, treat it separately, where we could fund it through cash reserve if you wish to fund it as a separate project. And if that were pulled out of here, and if we pulled out the one-time request from the Historic Commission to do a zoning overlay study, which is another capital project one time. You're not gonna do it in 2025, they wanna do it one time. You pull those things out, you have a balanced general fund and electric fund budget with no tax increase. So that's, I suggest that we treat those as separate motions to fund than the budget. Up or down.
Yeah, I like it. I'm really comfortable with where the borough's sitting. I think staff and the administration has done a really good job at putting this together. I mean, we've only had 2 budget meetings. They've gone pretty good. No tax increase.
We,
This is
you
good
missed,
news.
yesterday, Angie, but, real quick, on the electric fund, the overall electric fund, we have pretty much held the line on expenses as last year, pretty close to it. And, so there's no, rate increase needed there. And, we were able to, reduce the transfer from the electric fund again, to the general, and still come up with balanced budgets on both sides, general and electric, mostly in part due to the increases that were enacted last year and also some growth and some interest earnings in our investments. Any questions, Sally, about anything? I mean, we can, anybody have any questions? I know, Angie, you missed yesterday, so I don't know if you have any questions. Matt's not here and Greg aren't here, but it's something that we can take back to them on.
Well, I did email Matt and Sally on a question I had, so I'm gonna talk to Matt when he gets back on Thursday about some specifics. And I didn't have a chance to look today, but is last night's meeting online? Okay, I'll go back and watch it, so then if I do have any questions, I'll let you know.
Everybody good? All right. Do I have general public comment? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? We will not be heading to executive session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Ian, sometime, I know you wanna get